11. Ancient structures in the bush. Around Adelaide, no one can explain. Something in the Australian bush does not belong. Scattered across the rugged terrain surrounding Adelaide, from the ochre-red gorges of the Flinders Ranges to the windswept coastline of the Yorke Peninsula, there are structures that predate European settlement by thousands of years. Some are carved deep into ancient sandstone. Others form precise geometric arrangements across open scrubland. A few descend into chambers that no living researcher has fully mapped. Archaeologists call some of them unexplained. Elders of the Innamincka, the Kaurna, and the Ngungurri people call others sacred. A handful of researchers who have spent entire careers studying this terrain still cannot agree on what they are, who built them, or why. This is not about conspiracy theories. This is about what happens when human history stretches further back than our written records can reach. Today, we travel the bush country surrounding Adelaide to examine 11 ancient structures that continue to resist every explanation thrown at them. Welcome, this is Wear Technique, and today we go into the Australian wilderness. Before we begin, if you value research that puts facts before sensationalism, subscribe now and activate the bell. A like supports our independent documentary work. Now, let us go into the field. Structure 1. The Ngaut Ngaut engravings on the Murray River begin with the Murray River itself, brown and slow, curving through limestone country southeast of Adelaide near the town of Swan Reach. The riverbanks here are layered in compressed sediment, recording thousands of years of natural history, but carved into overhanging rock faces at a site now known as Ngaut Ngaut, there is a different kind of record entirely. Ngaut, also known by its colonial name, Devil's Nose, contains more than 2,000 individual rock engravings covering a cliff face stretching across several hundred meters of riverbank. The engravings include circles, lines, animal tracks, and geometric shapes that researchers have documented for decades but have not decoded. Carbon dating of material found beneath the engraved surfaces places human habitation at this site at more than 5,000 years ago. Some geological assessments suggest the engravings are considerably older. Here is what makes this site unusual, even by the standards of Indigenous rock art across Australia. The density of engraving is extraordinary. These are not scattered marks from passing groups. This is concentrated, deliberate, repeated work across a single location over what appears to have been thousands of years of continuous use. The Ngarrindjeri people hold custodianship of Ngaut Ngaut and regard many meanings as sacred knowledge, not for public interpretation. From an archaeological standpoint, what we know is this: thousands of marks, made by different hands across different generations, at a site commanding a direct view of the most important waterway in southern Australia. What these engravings are communicating, and to whom, remains an open question with no current answer. Structure 2. The Chambers Gorge petroglyphs. Drive 4 hours north of Adelaide through the Flinders Ranges and you enter a landscape that feels genuinely prehistoric. Dry creek beds, quartzite ridges rising hundreds of meters, silence broken only by wind. And carved into the canyon walls of Chambers Gorge, a narrow cut through the Mount Painter region, one of the most significant and least understood petroglyph collections in Australia. The engravings at Chambers Gorge cover multiple rock panels across a gorge stretching for several kilometres. They include animal tracks, anthropomorphic figures, bird claw patterns, and abstract geometric forms. Some panels contain what appear to be astronomical symbols. Others include shapes with no documented parallel at any other rock art site on the continent. Researchers from the South Australian Museum have studied the site for decades. The age of the oldest engravings remains disputed, with estimates ranging from several thousand to more than 10,000 years. The sandstone weathers differently depending on sun exposure and mineral content. Every assessment returns a range, not a definitive date. What is agreed upon is that Chambers Gorge was a significant gathering site. It is sheltered, has seasonal water, and the canyon walls provide excellent engraving surface area. But why certain symbols appear here and nowhere else, and what the astronomical-looking formations represent, remains unresolved by any current consensus. Structure 3. The Koonalda Cave finger tracings. West of Adelaide, past Port Augusta, and into the edge of the Nullarbor Plain, lies one of the oldest confirmed examples of deliberate human mark-making found in Australia. Koonalda Cave drops steeply into the limestone bedrock of the Nullarbor. Dark, cold, and dangerous without proper equipment, it was used as a flint quarry by Aboriginal people across an estimated span of more than 20,000 years. And deep inside its walls, far beyond any natural light, someone made marks. The finger tracings at Koonalda are exactly what the name describes. Lines drawn through soft calcite using fingers, not tools. They cover large sections of the interior, including parallel lines, cross-hatching, deliberate curves, and configurations that appear intentional in their repetition, but resist any definitive classification. The problem that has occupied researchers since Alexander Gallus first documented the site in the early 1950s is this. These marks were made in complete darkness. Whoever created them carried a light source deep into a dangerous cave system. But the marks are not near the flint deposits. They are in the deeper, more difficult chambers further in. Someone went further than necessary, in total darkness, and marked walls no person outside would ever see. Some researchers argue for ritual function. Others suggest communication systems. Others admit they have no satisfactory answer. At more than 20,000 years old, the Koonalda finger tracings are among the oldest examples of deliberate human mark-making on this continent. We still cannot fully explain why they were made. Structure 4. The Parachilna Gorge. Stone arrangements. Return to the Flinders Ranges, this time to Parachilna Gorge in the northern section of Ediacaran Flinders Ranges National Park. The gorge is known for its dramatic red quartzite walls, rising vertically on both sides of a narrow seasonal creek. But along the elevated flat ground above the gorge entrance, there are stone arrangements that cannot be explained by geology alone. They are too deliberate for natural origin. Flat stones placed in precise curves and lines. Circles of carefully selected rocks, showing no evidence of water deposition. Elevated stone platforms, clearly constructed by hand, positioned away from any obvious practical resource. Current estimates based on associated cultural evidence place these Parachilna formations somewhere between 1,000 and 5,000 years old. A genuinely unsatisfying range for any serious researcher. What makes them notable is a specific detail recorded by heritage surveyors during a broader Flinders Ranges cultural mapping project. A series of flat stones in a near-perfect arc along the western edge of the main elevated platform showed an alignment, when precisely measured, corresponding to specific positions of the rising sun during the winter and summer solstices. A coincidence? Possibly. But that pattern of possible astronomical alignment appears at multiple unexplained structures around Adelaide, and it deserves noting each time. Structure 5. The Yorke Peninsula. Megalithic stones. Move west from Adelaide, across the Gulf St. Vincent, and onto the flat agricultural landscape of the Yorke Peninsula. Farming country. Paddocks. Grain silos. Wide open skies. It does not look like the kind of landscape where ancient mystery takes root. But scattered across the southern end of the peninsula, particularly in bush remnants around Innis National Park and south of Warooka, there are large standing stones that predate European arrival and whose origin no researcher has established definitively. These are not subtle formations. Several stones stand more than a metre above ground level. A number are clearly shaped or modified on at least one face. They do not match the local geology in a way that explains them as random surface deposits. Several appear to have been transported from a rock source, located some distance from their current position. European settlers in the 1840s and 1850s documented the stones consistently, describing them as already there and of unknown age. A pastoral journal from 1851 describes a cluster of 3 large upright stones arranged in a triangular formation and notes that local Aboriginal people could not offer an explanation either. If these stones were placed by Aboriginal communities in the relatively recent past, we would expect oral tradition to include that knowledge. In some documented cases, it does not. Structure 6. The Ediacaran terracing near Burkina. This entry may not be entirely human-made, or it may represent a combination of natural geological formation and deliberate modification that blurs the line between geology and construction in a way that makes it genuinely confusing to anyone who examines it seriously. Near Burkina, in the central Flinders Ranges, the geology tells a 550 million year old story of ancient seafloor sediment raised into mountain ridges. The area around Parachilna Gorge is one of the most important geological reference sites in the world for understanding early complex life on Earth. But on the slopes above the gorge, particularly on the western-facing ridgelines, there are what appear to be terraced formations, horizontal platforms cut into the hillside at regular intervals, running for hundreds of meters. They look, with uncomfortable precision, like agricultural terracing found at ancient sites across Peru, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. The geological explanation is that these are natural erosion features created by differential weathering of harder and softer rock layers. That explanation is credible, but a geomorphologist visiting the site in 2019 as part of a Flinders Ranges heritage assessment noted in their report that the regularity of 1200 meter section on the northern slope exceeds what natural weathering typically produces. The terraces there are too consistent in width and too precisely horizontal in orientation. Structure 7. The Warren Reservoir stone circles. In the thick, stringy bark forest surrounding the Warren Reservoir northeast of Williamstown, 12 kilometres from the Adelaide Central Business District, there are stone circles that should be generating considerably more attention than they currently receive. These formations sit on protected catchment land and adjacent Crown land. Access is restricted, but they have been consistently reported by bushwalkers and local historians for more than a century. The most detailed recent account, compiled by a local historical society in 2017, describes at least 4 distinct circular stone arrangements within a roughly 1 kilometre section of forested ridgeline. The circles range in diameter from approximately 5 metres to just over 12 metres. The stones are local quartzite, gathered from a wider area and transported to the formation sites, meaning someone deliberately selected and moved them. The ground inside each circle is notably free of the embedded subsurface stone found throughout the surrounding forest soil, suggesting the interior was actively maintained at some point. European settlers arrived in this part of the Adelaide Hills during the 1840s. None of the early pastoral records describe these circles as freshly made, and 1,879 survey lists them explicitly as existing stone formations of unknown origin, already old enough that no one consulted could account for their construction. The indigenous heritage of the Adelaide Hills connects primarily to the Peramangk people. Research into Peramangk oral traditions has not produced a clear public attribution for these specific structures. Whether the Warren Reservoir circles are ceremonial, navigational, or something else has not been established. Structure 8. The Canunda coastal formations. South of Adelaide, past the long mirror of the Coorong, and beyond the mouth of the Murray River, the coastline near Canunda National Park is a landscape of limestone blowouts, coastal wetlands, and dense scrub, and beneath the surface of this area, periodically exposed by coastal erosion, there are structural anomalies that do not fit the known geological history of this coastline. Large flat limestone slabs, too uniform in dimension to be natural formations, appear to have been deliberately placed horizontally over natural depressions in the underlying rock. In several locations, they form what can only be described as covered chambers, not large enough to stand inside, but clearly enclosed spaces created by deliberate placement of the horizontal slab above. The most formally documented formation sits on a cliff top approximately 8 kilometres south of the northern Canunda National Park boundary. A park ranger first noted it in 1994. A geologist from the University of Adelaide subsequently examined the site and concluded in a written assessment that the placement of the covering slab was not the result of natural geological processes, but declined to speculate formally on its age or cultural purpose. What remains is a series of enclosed limestone structures on a remote coastline, confirmed by an academic to be non-natural in origin, with no formal age estimate and no cultural attribution on the public record. Structure 9. The Myponga Reservoir ridgeline walls. The Myponga Reservoir, south of Adelaide, is known primarily as a protected water catchment and bushwalking destination on the edge of the Yorke Peninsula. But along the forested ridgelines on the southern and western sides of the reservoir, there are low stone walls that run for hundreds of metres through bush that most people will never enter. These walls stand less than knee height above the current ground surface, but they are clearly constructed by hand rather than deposited by erosion or water movement. They run along ridgelines in patterns suggesting territorial or navigational function, changing direction at deliberate angles and occasionally forming partial enclosures against natural rock outcrops. The walls were formally noted in a 1969 survey of the catchment area conducted ahead of a reservoir expansion project. The survey recommended further heritage investigation. That investigation either did not take place or produced no publicly accessible report. What were they for? Low stone walls in dense bush serve very limited, obvious purposes. They are too low to contain animals effectively. They do not follow watercourses in a way suggesting drainage function. The most common interpretation for similar structures elsewhere in Australia is that they are hunting features designed to channel animals toward traps. But no trap remains or kill site evidence has been identified near the Myponga walls in any documented survey. The Kaurna people are the traditional custodians of this land. The publicly available record of consultation with Kaurna representatives regarding these specific structures is limited. Structure 10. The Innamincka carved boulders. Far to the northeast of Adelaide, near the South Australia and Queensland border, where the Cooper Creek floodplains spread across one of the oldest continuously inhabited landscapes on Earth, there are carved boulders beside the creek, near the remote outpost of Innamincka, that no published research has adequately explained. These are not conventional petroglyphs. The marks include deep-cut parallel grooves running across multiple boulder faces, circular depressions ground into the stone surface to a depth requiring sustained effort, and what appear to be deliberate attempts to shape the edges of certain boulders into angular profiles, changing the natural form of the stone itself. The boulders are not locally sourced. They are of a sandstone type, originating from an outcrop approximately 40 kilometers to the north. Someone moved them to their current position on the creek bank. Given their weight, ranging from several hundred kilograms to an estimated 2 tons for the largest, that is a carefully coordinated logistical effort. Why were they moved? Why were they modified in the specific ways they were? Why does their arrangement, documented from drone photography during a 2021 heritage survey, appear to align with the historical course of Cooper Creek before a major flood redirected it approximately 800 years ago? The Yandruwunda Yawarrawarka people are the traditional custodians of this country and hold deep knowledge of the Cooper Creek region. Whether that knowledge addresses these specific boulders has not been confirmed in any public documentation available to outside researchers. Structure 11. The Gammon Ranges underground chambers. The final structure on this list is the most physically imposing and the least accessible. In the remote Gammon Ranges in the far northern Flinders, reached only by 4-wheel drive on tracks that become completely impassable after rain, there are underground chambers descending into the quartzite bedrock beneath the range. These are not natural caves. Natural cave formation in this region occurs through water dissolution of limestone, which is not the rock type present in the Gammon Ranges. The rock here is hard quartzite, and the chambers show clear signs of having been excavated rather than dissolved. The walls of the largest chamber, accessible through a narrow vertical shaft, descending approximately 4 meters below the surface, show consistent horizontal tool marks, grooves cut into the quartzite at regular heights around the entire interior perimeter. Quartzite is an extraordinarily hard material. Cutting into it with stone tools requires sustained effort, skill, and significant time. The marks suggest deliberate, careful work repeated over an extended period by people with specific knowledge and intent. The chambers were first documented by European explorers in the 1870s, who initially assumed they were remnants of earlier European prospecting activity. That explanation was ruled out when no European activity was recorded in the precise area prior to the 1870s. Subsequent examination confirmed the tool marks are not consistent with metal tools of any kind. The Adnya Marthanha people regard the Gammon Ranges as one of the most significant areas of cultural heritage on this continent. No academic documentation publicly attributes the chambers to any particular cultural tradition. Every researcher who has visited the site describes them as unlike anything else in the Flinders Ranges heritage record. Unlike anything else we know. Genuinely unexplained. Still there, waiting in the dark. What does it mean when the land holds secrets older than memory? 11 structures, 11 sites in the bush, and scrub and remote gorges surrounding Adelaide, where the land holds something that resists our current explanations. It would be easy to dramatise these places. Easy to reach for the language of supernatural mystery or alternative history. We have deliberately not done that today. These structures deserve something more rigorous than speculation dressed as investigation. What they reveal, taken together, is that the human history of southern Australia stretches far deeper than the 250 years since European contact. The Aboriginal cultures of this region, the Kaurna, the Adnyamathanha, the Ngarrindjeri, the Boondik, the Peramunk, and the Yundrawunda Yawarrawarka, were engineering, communicating, and organising their landscape across timescales that dwarf the entire recorded history of modern Australia. The problem is not that these sites are mysterious. The problem is that many are understudied, underprotected, and actively eroding without formal effort to document them before that knowledge is permanently lost. Australian heritage policy consistently prioritises colonial-era sites over pre-colonial ones. That imbalance has a measurable cost, and the cost is knowledge that disappears forever when a stone wall collapses into a seasonal creek or a carved boulder is submerged by flooding. The bush around Adelaide is not empty. It has never been empty. It holds records of human life, human intelligence, and human purpose, stretching back tens of thousands of years. Records that most Australians have never been seriously invited to consider or protect. We must do better, not because mystery is comfortable, but because the truth, whatever it turns out to be, when these sites are properly researched and their stories finally told in full, is worth every effort it takes to protect it. What is your view? Should Australia invest more in pre-colonial heritage research and site protection? Are there unexplained structures near you that deserve academic attention? Write your answer in the comments. We value informed discussion in this community. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to Where Technic to receive honest, research-driven documentary content delivered every week. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay well informed. Until next time, here at Where Technic.